suspected food poisoning, where in instances we've had children who bought food from informal traders outside of schools. We'll try to have that conversation with him perhaps when the network permits. In the meantime, let's move on to this conversation. The International Women's Forum South Africa's Hall of Fame honors women who have dedicated their lives to empowering others and advancing women's leadership on a global scale. Now, these trailblazers are shaping a fairer, more equal and more peaceful world. How is the Hall of Fame promoting a culture of inclusivity and fairness in various industries? Well, we'll find out. We're joined by IWFSA's board member, Nicqui Galaktiou. Nicqui, good morning. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate your patience. You've been very patient.
Good morning, Jenna-Lee. Thank you for having me.
Let's start with what exactly the organization is doing. Tell us a bit more about the organization and some of its key programs.
The IWFSA is the South African chapter of the International Women's Forum. It's an organization of more than 7,500 members, preeminent women around the world, preeminent leaders, and it's across 36 countries and 6 continents, so it's a very powerful organization. The South African chapter, which was started by former First Lady, our patron, Mrs. Zanele Mbeki, is focused really, our vision and our pillars is focused on the next generation of leaders, paying it forward. And I think the key 3 words that we focus on is to inspire, to ignite and to impact. And that's really what we're about. The areas of the categories that really mean a lot to us and that we're passionate about is mentorship and leadership. Very importantly, and especially after today, gender-based violence and femicide. And as a lawyer, that's something I'm very passionate about. Financial inclusion and the gender pay parity in the workforce. And of course, having more women representatives on boards. That's kind of where we're focusing our main categories.
And a lot of skills in that organization. I can just imagine the impact that skills transfer can have, for instance, through your programs. But let's take the conversation a little bit wider. How does gender equality impact or contribute to broader societal progress, specifically within the context of South Africa as well?
How does it contribute? We are working on empowering women because we are working towards changing legislation, gender equity. Without that, without people understanding that they need to really put a lot of emphasis into women development, we're never going to achieve that equality. And we're very focused on working towards really changing the environment, teaching, and really empowering women going forward. And as you said, within the organization, we have very powerful, preeminent leaders. And the way to do that really is to pay it forward and lift as we rise so that we can make the change and be the change.
What is some of the key legislation that you believe needs to be changed for us to see that transformation?
We have worked, and in fairness, I did make representations to Parliament on behalf of the IWFSA in respect of the Domestic Violence Act, the Criminal Procedure Act, the Sexual Harassment Act. So those are areas that there has been slow progress. I won't say there's been no progress, but we need to see far more improvement. And to ultimately eradicate, if we can get to that point where we can eradicate gender-based violence and femicide, we need to have equality.
Absolutely. Speaking of equality and inclusivity across industries as well, a very important topic. Tell us more about the Hall of Fame and how it helps to promote a culture of inclusivity. I'm very intrigued by this.
The Hall of Fame is an evening. We're having it next week on the 31st of October. It's an evening to celebrate exemplary, powerful women who are trailblazers, who have achieved far beyond and made their mark in terms of empowering women, being committed, being relentless in their drive towards making change. And the awards evening is to celebrate these women. Every year we nominate 2 South African women whose reach is not just local but global, and 1 African woman on the continent. And next week we'll be having 3 women that will be awarded. And I'd just like to say, just to sum it up really succinctly, we were honored to have President Cyril Ramaphosa attend last year. And in his address, he said, and I'll paraphrase, "These are women trailblazers who are making their mark not only in Mzansi, but globally, and they are shattering barriers." And I think that says it all.
Absolutely. I'd like to know more about these women, though. Who are the women that will be honored next week?
I can't disclose that.
Are you sure? Not even a little sneak
and
peek?
as a lawyer, I am absolutely subject to secrecy. I can't disclose that, but I am very excited. It's going to be a very powerful event, and it is sponsored by Standard Bank, and I would be remiss in not thanking them for being a sponsor for 3 consecutive years in really, I think, recognizing and contributing to the empowerment of women.
What advice would you give to businesses looking to improve gender equality and, of course, foster a truly inclusive culture?
What advice would I give to businesses? I think businesses need to look at having equal participation by women. We also need to look at the gender pay gap and the recent changes to the Companies Act in respect of transparency of pay. So women generally tend to be paid less, notwithstanding that they may be in the same position as a male counterpart. So I think for businesses to want to get to the position where they are contributing to the development of women, they need to look at more female participation on boards, executive level, management level, to give them that recognition and to obviously award them and to pay them what they deserve.
Nicqui, I'm wondering if briefly, in conclusion, I can just ask you, all these powerful women that we have in South Africa and across the continent, very prominent, influential women, what do we do to make sure that their skills, their knowledge, their wisdom really trickles down to community level, where it can make a difference on community level?
One of our really strong categories that we are emphasizing and working towards, and I'm also very committed in that area, is the leadership and mentoring. And the way it trickles down is for us as the senior leaders to empower the next level, the next generation of leaders, and paying it forward so that they can continue with paying it forward to the other community members. And that's the only way it can be done. We pass on our skills, our knowledge, our experience, and we're extremely passionate about doing it. So I think that's in a very, very short answer that I can give you in a short space of time.
Thank you so much for your time today. I guess I'll have to wait and see who these powerful women are that will be honored next week at the Hall of Fame. We really appreciate your time today here on eNCA.
Thank you, Jenny.
That was IWFSA's board member, Nicqui Galaktiou, talking to us about the Hall of Fame. It's taking place next week. Can't wait to see and hear what comes out of it. That brings us to the end of today's edition of NewsLink. Thank you so much for staying with me. Tomorrow is Friday, and I'll be back at 9 a.m. for